Hello and welcome to another beehiiv feature update. In this video, I'm going to cover new additions to our editor settings that allow you to set content borders around sections. If you're familiar with newsletters like The Morning Brew and others, you might be familiar with this design element that we're about to get into. But these features allow you to group pieces of content together, like a heading, text, and say images or buttons, and then add some spacing and padding and a border around just that content. Before this update, you'd be able to add a border around the entire newsletter itself, and now we're adding the ability to really customize and go very in-depth to the actual borders within specific content. I'll get into what that means now. So if we go to a post, and I'm going to go to this post that I created ahead of time, we have this content, and then we have these borders that surround the content. We have a different content background than the actual background of the newsletter, but it creates this very nice aesthetic look where each story or each piece of the newsletter is in its own section. So I'm going to jump in and show you how you can build this experience. The first step is going to be to highlight all of the content you want to group together and use our section feature. If I do that, it's going to ungroup and it's going to just make these separate. So I'm going to go back and group to a section. The next step is going to go to visual settings. And now you'll see we have all of these settings that are options. I think before we had text color and background color. Now we can set the background color to white and we'll keep the text color the same way. If we go to inner spacing, this is going to define the spacing on the top or the bottom for the text on the inside of the box. To make this uniform with the rest of the boxes that we made below, I'm going to set the inner spacing to 25 pixels. And now you'll be able to see what that looks like. So this is what it looks like without the border. And then we have this 25 pixel inner spacing. The next thing we're going to do is go to the borders and click radius. Radius is going to define the corners. If you set it to 0, you'll have very square corners. Up to 100, you'll have completely round corners. I like the look of we'll call it 15 pixels, and you'll see what that looks like in a second. The thickness is going to be the number of pixels wide. So we go with 2. We're going to use this orange color. So you can see in real time this updated to match the one below it. You can make it dashed. You can make it dotted. You can make it solid. You can also change that color to be whatever you want. If we look at the preview, you can see that it's looking almost all the way there. You'll notice that there's still this space between these two stories that's a little bit smaller than the ones below. If we go to visual settings and go to spacings, you can set the outer spacing. This is going to be the space above and below each grouping. And in this case, I'll make it 14 pixels. That will then add that spacing and make it the same as the rest. You could expand this to be 28. You could expand it to be whatever you want. One of the more advanced features here is if you go into each of these spacing settings, you can actually click on these icons and actually set individual items. So say you want to have no padding on the sides, but you want 25 up top and bottom, you can do that. You could do the opposite. You can do outer spacing. You can set the top to be big and the bottom to be small. For borders, you can do the same thing. Say we want the top radius to be 0. We want square top and a curved bottom. You can do that as well. And if we go to borders again, you can also change the thickness of each side. So say we want to make the sides, the left and right, super thick, and the bottom and top super thin. You can create this interesting kind of curved experience within the editor itself. This lends itself to a ton of flexibility with the design of these newsletters. If you want to just restart from scratch, you can always hit the reset button. That will basically take everything and set it back to normal. A ton of stuff to play with and really allows you to dial in on your exact aesthetic and exactly how you want your newsletter to look. Thank you so much for your time. We look forward to seeing what you build with these great new features.